Hi, it's Dr. Christy Goodwin. Welcome back to the Spacious Success podcast. I want to start today with something that I've been thinking about quite a lot lately. It's something that keeps showing up in coaching sessions, in keynote Q&As, and sometimes even in coffees with friends. I see smart, successful, high-achieving women who are saying it half jokingly but half longingly, maybe I'll just become a trad wife. And we laugh because obviously we're not going to give up our independence. We've built careers, we've led teams, we've made our own money, often since we were teenagers. But behind that joke, I think there's something else. And I want to spend today's episode unpacking what that something else might actually be. Because I think it tells us everything about what the real problem is. And it's not an ambition problem, as we've been told. Hi, I'm Dr. Christy Goodwin, a Neuro-Performance scientist, speaker, and executive coach who learned the hard way that chasing success can come at a cost. After burnout landed me in hospital, I made it my mission to help ambitious women who are done trading their health and happiness for high performance. On Spacious Success, I share science-backed strategies and real stories to help you flourish as a female at work and beyond so you can stop paying the success tax. A couple of years ago, I was speaking at a leadership event. It was a conference, and one of their senior executives approached me after my presentation. She had been in the same organisation for 14 years. She'd steadily climbed the corporate ladder. She was widely regarded as one of the sharpest, most strategic minds in that building. And she said to me, "I just turned down a promotion." She wasn't distressed about it. She was quite matter of fact. And she said, 12 months ago, I would have said yes without any hesitation. But I looked at the people in those roles above me. I looked closely at the female ones especially, and I thought, is this the life that I want? Is that what the next decade of my life looks like? And I genuinely couldn't say yes. She was not burned out in the traditional sense. She was performing well. She could not reconcile what she was being asked to become with how she wanted to live. Thankfully, she knew what this version of success in her life looked like. What does success in this season look like? And she knew that taking the promotion wouldn't allow her to live in close proximity to her values. Her organisation lost a high performer. This woman was labelled as lacking ambition. And nothing in the system changed because the system told itself a story that it protected itself from accountability. And this is what is often being referred to as an ambition gap. But that's not what it really is. Instead, I think it's a well-being gap in disguise. We've been told that women are leaning out and deliberately choosing not to lean in because what they really want to do, I believe, is often just lay down. And it is playing out in offices and organisations everywhere, in Australia, internationally, not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently and cumulatively. Today, in this episode, I want to spend a moment and I want to double click on this trad wife conversation in an interesting way because I think it is doing important diagnostic work and we need to listen to what it is really telling us. To be absolutely clear, this is not a critique at all of any woman who chooses not to work or to have the option and the desire to structure her life and her family's life differently. That is a deeply personal, legitimate choice. And I'm not here to adjudicate how anyone organises their life. What I am interested in is why this fantasy is resonating with so many women who have no intention of actually acting on it. Why would women who have postgraduate degrees suddenly want to swap this for a floral apron so that they can knead sourdough for hours on end? Why is it an appealing alternative for women? And when something resonates that broadly, is it worth us pausing and asking, what is this conversation pointing at? Because I don't think it's about apron strings or nostalgia. I don't think it's about the role, and I certainly don't think it's about wanting to give up our independence. I think what we're craving as women is relief. A slower morning, no rushing, time to rest, time to breathe, a life where you are not simultaneously managing a demanding career, running a household, carrying the emotional load for your team and your family, tracking appointments, volunteering at school, organising the birthday gift for your colleague that you've never met, and doing it all with great hair, taking your 120 grams of protein each day and hitting your creatine target at the same point, and with a smile plastered on your face. High-achieving women did not just break into the boardroom. We brought the unpaid domestic and caring labour with us, and now we're often carrying a digital load too. I see women too often carrying loads that no one pays for and that no one sees, but everyone relies on. We carry the cognitive and emotional labour, and the numbers make the invisible visible. On average, in Australia, we know women perform 32 hours per week in unpaid domestic and care work. That is more than men, 9 hours more than men in the same week. This is Australian research that tells us despite rising female workforce participation, women still form the majority of unpaid domestic labour worldwide. And this is not just about who does the cooking or the laundry. Research consistently tells us that women disproportionately carry the routine, the relentless, time-intensive work, the cleaning, the meals, the mental tracking of every moving part of households. Women frequently do more of this work even when they out-earn their partners. We've broken into the boardroom, but we didn't leave the second shift behind us. We are now running both, often with a digital third shift layered on top. So the trad wife fantasy hits a nerve because it dares to imagine a life that we have been told that we cannot have. A life where success does not require constant self-sacrifice, where we are not expected to play both roles endlessly and seamlessly without any cost. We don't want to go back, nor do we want to lean out as women, but we do want a new model. We want better systems and structures, one where we value sustainability over sacrifice, one that does not reward burnout or penalise us for holding boundaries, one that makes room for what I call spacious success. Success with space, with your health intact, where you can be present. And here is the thing, the data is actually telling us the same story. The trad wife fantasy is not just a fringe sentiment. It is a symptom of something I believe is so much more measurable. Let me walk you through what the research is actually showing us, because the numbers are significant and they are not, I believe, being discussed loudly enough. McKinsey & Co. and leanin.org commissioned some research in 2025 called the Women in Workplace Report, and they found that 6 in 10 senior-level women report feeling frequently burned out, compared to around 50% of men in similar roles. But here's the finding that stops me every single time. Women are now less interested in being promoted than men. Not because ambition has disappeared, the research is clear that women are just as committed to their careers. But fewer are aspiring to senior roles because the cost of progression has become too high. Women are not disengaging, they are exhausted. They are stretched because they're stressed. They are tired because they're taxed. They are watching the exhausted and depleted women who have paved the path before them, and they're questioning if that's what they want to aspire to achieve. The juggle-struggle numbers make everyday reality visible. 79% of women report yearning for a slower pace of life, hence why the trad wife lifestyle may be appealing. 70% of women say juggling work and personal commitments is taking a serious toll on them. 64% admit to drowning in household and lifestyle administration. These aren't soft statistics. They are women saying that I am carrying too much, and there's no end in sight. Before I share the harder statistics, let me acknowledge something that's really important. Interestingly, women's participation in the Australian workforce actually reached a record high, nearly 64% of a rate in 2025. And that's worth celebrating. Women are showing up, we are committed, the pipeline isn't empty. But participation is not the same as thriving. And that distinction matters enormously. In 2025's Forbes reported that 450,000 women exited the US workforce alone. And when asked why, the most common denominator was caregiving responsibilities and the high cost of childcare. Not a lack of ambition, structural incompatibility. When the system refuses to adapt so that women do not opt out of work, they opt out of unsustainable workplace design. And for the women who stay, the question we're not asking loudly enough is at what cost? Because the GLWS Gender Wellbeing Gap 2025 report tells us a confronting story about what's happening underneath these record participation numbers. A sustained year-on-year decline in women's well-being across work satisfaction, personal well-being, life satisfaction, and overall happiness. Women are in the workforce in record numbers. They are, but they're not okay. And the energy data within that report is confronting. Vitality and energy is the lowest scoring well-being dimension for women and the area in most pronounced decline since 2016. Despite reporting healthier lifestyle habits than men, 70% of women still feel exhausted at work. 74% are skipping essential breaks. Women are starting the day from a depleted state. And I hear this conversation over coffees at the end of keynotes, in the quiet conversations that happen after the room empties. And I hear it in the executive coaching sessions that I have with incredible women who are wondering, what on earth am I doing wrong? What else could I do better? And I hear this when I catch up with friends. Women who are accomplished, performing at a high level, meeting every expectation, and privately running on empty. Women who are fine on the outside, but are totally fried on the inside. Participation rates don't capture that data. This data does. Australian research tells us that 72% of women experienced burnout in the last year, according to Women's Agenda, despite greater access to wellbeing initiatives. Those initiatives are functioning like a band-aid over a structural problem. The Deloitte Women at Work 2025 report found that 36% of women said their stress levels were higher than the year before, and only 4 in 10 women can switch off from work at all. Here's the neuroscience behind all of this. Your prefrontal cortex is the seat of your executive function. It's the CEO of your brain. It's responsible for strategic thinking, decision making, and it's metabolically expensive for your prefrontal cortex to run. It requires glucose, adequate sleep, recovery cycles. But when you are perpetually operating in a high demand environment without those inputs, your cognitive quality will simply decline. This will show up as insomnia, decision fatigue, digestive issues, emotional blunting, impaired thinking. The brain fog we often say is attributed to perimenopause or menopause may be more likely connected to poor sleep and high stress as much as it is hormonal. It's not a character flaw, it's biological. And women in leadership carry a compounded version of this every day. Christina Maslach's work around burnout has been the most rigorously validated in the literature, and it identifies exhaustion as the most predictive dimension of burnout. Women in demanding roles showing that the exhaustion is appearing at higher rates. Women who are simply carrying too much. We've seen a trend towards women micro-shifting, and I find this trend fascinating. Research has identified, because of more flexible work arrangements, invisible strategic adjustments that women have been making quietly for years, often compressing their work into unconventional windows, adjusting their hours around caregiving responsibility, recalibrating their energy. Women who work from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. rush to pick up the kids or visit their aging parents and then log back into their work computer from 8 to 10 p.m. Women who've been adapting to make work creatively, persistently, but often at a personal cost. The system has never had to bend or flex back. And here's the strategic implication for organisations. When the most capable, experienced females in your organisation have calculated that the cost of continuing will exceed the benefit, it's not an individual performance issue. They don't need another resilience program. It is an organisational performance crisis happening in slow motion. We don't have an ambition gap, we have a gender wellbeing gap. We have to address this gender wellbeing gap that is at the root of this. It's costing organisations the talent that they cannot simply afford to lose. So what can we do with this? I'm going to share what I think are 3 starting points. Whether you are navigating this for yourself personally, or perhaps you're leading an organisation that really wants to close this gap. The first thing is to, I think, name the calculation. High-performing women who are stepping back are not doing so impulsively. They are performing a complex cost-benefit analysis, usually in their heads in the shower, over months or even over years. The most powerful thing you can do is to make that calculation explicit and informed. Ask yourself, what am I actually paying? What's the true cost of this current model? And I often call this the success tax. It becomes visible when you write it down. And once you can see it clearly, you can start making intentional decisions about what you're actually willing to pay. The second thing is to audit what your human operating system, your HOS, actually needs. It has some non-negotiable biological demands: sleep, quality recovery, regulated stress, regulated nervous systems, genuine human connections. These aren't luxuries, they're operational requirements. And when those inputs are consistently compromised, your prefrontal cortex is running at reduced capacity. Your immunity is compromised, your well-being suffers, decisions are impaired, your creativity declines, your emotional regulation suffers. The question is not how to want less. The question is how to build success architecture that will include your biological blueprint so that you can sustain performance. This is exactly what I do with my coaching clients. The third one, and this one is directed at organisations as much as individuals, is to change what success looks like at the top. The McKinsey & Co data is unambiguous. When women receive the same level of career support as men, including sponsorship, real flexibility, and cultures that respect recovery and rest, the ambition gap disappears. Because as I've said, ambition isn't declining. We want better conditions. Your women in senior roles are paying an unsustainable success tax. And this results in the women below them questioning whether that's what they want to emulate. Role modelling sustainable high performance is not a soft HR initiative. It is the single most important retention strategy and signal that organisations can send. The well-being gap is closable, but not with more leadership programs or unconscious bias training. It closes when that model of success at the top changes. When high performance and sustainable biology stop being treated as opposing forces, because women, we're not broken, the system is. This week's Power Up protocol, I want you to name your calculation. I want you to spend some time defining what success in this season of your life really looks like. Maybe you can journal, have a chat with a friend. Make sure that you're climbing the right mountain, because I work with many high performers who climb to the top only to realise they've climbed the wrong mountain. Take some time then to reflect on what's the actual cost of your current success model. Not the visible costs. Spend some time to dig out what are the hidden costs. The sleep you're not getting, the recovery that you're not protecting, the walk or the gym session you keep skipping, the dinners with girlfriends that you keep cancelling on, the presence that you are not bringing, the cognitive load that you are carrying without any acknowledgement. And when you can see the success tax in writing, you can start to decide what you're willing to pay. What's the price of success? My Powered Up Women keynote takes this conversation directly into organisations with the data, the neuroscience, and the frameworks that leaders need to genuinely and actually close the gender wellbeing gap. If your team needs this conversation, inquire about me bringing this to your next event via my website. I'm Dr. Christy Goodwin. Thank you for listening to this episode of Spacious Success.